Hi everyone, Peter here once again. Thanks for joining me on my channel. If you haven't been here before, this is Thailand Bound. Right, today I'm going to be reading out 5 viewer stories. That's 5 stories that have been sent into this channel. Experiences, true experiences of things that have happened to people in Thailand. I hope you're going to enjoy these. Let's jump straight in. Let's get straight into it.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Me and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, were on one of our first trips to Phuket. I'll call her Boom Boom. I'm just kidding, my wife would hate that. Let's call her Gucci. So Gucci and I were pretty green when it came to Thailand travel experience. Sure, we knew about the bar scene, but like anyone who travels for the first few times, we were pretty trusting. It's as if you're getting older, you realise you should avoid dangerous activities. So this story takes place around 2013. I was in my mid-30s, my wife a bit older. Hard to remember the exact year, as my now wife and I travel to Thailand every few months, and it's kind of our go-to place to get away. During this particular trip, there were 0 flights from our country, so we had to book a package tour including hotel and flight. Not a bad price considering. From the get-go, it was not our style of travel. The tour operator, who was a Korean guy, took all of our passports and said he needed them to check into the hotel. Of course, everybody gave them to him. Upon check-in, it was a pretty basic hotel. We're not stuck up or snobs, but a nice hotel typically costs us around $100 a night, so we knew we were not going to have that same luxury feeling at this budget hotel that we were being checked into. I immediately found a scooter rental shop and we jammed our shared leather suitcase into the leg section of the scooter and went for a cruise looking for a new hotel. Sure enough, the moment we pulled out of the driveway, it started to rain. My girlfriend suggested we should head down towards Patong Beach, as she had done some research before leaving home on the internet. We found another hotel that was only about $80 a night. It is still there. It was run by a French guy at the time, and he even let me take his vintage Vespa for a ride. It's a great hotel with a real Indochina vibe. It's just up the hill from the main beach. My girlfriend is now my wife, and we have gone back a few times just for nostalgic purposes, as it was a lot like a honeymoon trip back then. We rented a jet ski one afternoon, but the waves were crazy big. The guy renting out the jet ski said not to worry, and we enjoyed riding on the jet ski together for 20 minutes or so. As we arrived back to the beach, the engine cut out and the jet ski banked slightly. A big wave hit us and we flipped over. We both swallowed some seawater and I grabbed my wife and pushed her away from the now upside down jet ski. She's quite short, and even though I could touch the ground easily, she needed some help. The jet ski guys were not happy at all, but they didn't ask for any money and helped us get into the shore, and a couple of staff helped them flip the jet ski back over. After many thank yous and apologies, we made a quick exit after returning the life jackets. Perhaps we are the reason for the jet ski scams after 2013. During this trip, we had lots of fun, lots of aerobics and lots of massages. We ended up getting what the massage shop call a honeymoon massage. I'll leave it up to couples traveling to Thailand to ask for this if they want more info. It was nearing the end of our trip, so we went back to the original hotel to retrieve our passports, and the tour operator was such a bad person. He wanted a payment to get our passports back as we did not stay at the hotel. Now, remember, we paid for the hotel, we just didn't stay in it. Now, I was pretty calm, but I told him in not too many words that if he did not give us our passports back, I was willing to cause him a lot of pain. I told him he did not know me, but if you are looking to steal from us, it was not going to happen unless one of us was planning on becoming unconscious. He said something to my girlfriend in Korean and reluctantly gave us our passports back without an altercation. We didn't use his service to return to the airport, but instead took our own taxi back. Great trip all round, scootering all around through backwoods and trails to find some hidden beaches, etc. Phuket still has lots of hidden gems and beautiful people and wonderful experiences to offer, even for an older than most couples pretending to be young. So there you go, nice little story there. The jet ski scams, you know, there's a lot of talk about the jet ski scams. They're not all scammers. It's not like if you rent a jet ski, you're guaranteed to be scammed. It's only the odd rogue element down there. I've taken jet skis out and never had a problem. But as I always say, if you want to rent a jet ski, what I would suggest is watch the person before you. So wait till somebody rents it, and then when they come back, just watch to see what happens. If he gives his life jacket back and walks away, no problem, go for it. But if there's an altercation, a bit of an argument starts, then you know they're a bit, they're not too honest. Okay, let's not waste time. Let's jump straight into story number 2. Now, this story is a little bit different in that the guy's talking about a ladyboy. Thailand, they have a third gender, as they say. The ladyboys can be quite attractive compared to anywhere else around the world. Now, in this story, he refers to this ladyboy as a she or a lady. So please don't leave comments saying, it's actually a guy. We know that. I'm just saying for this story, he refers to this person as a lady or a she. And if you understand that, there will be some photographs at the end and a bit of an explanation. But let's get into this great story. I messaged a ladyboy on a dating website called Thai Friendly around 2 weeks before I was coming to Thailand, simply because I thought she was one of the most beautiful ladyboys on the website. She was 23 years old, from a rural area 10 hours drive north of Bangkok. We spoke a bit on the Line app with the usual questions. Then I said I would see her on a specific date next week. When I arrived in Bangkok, I decided to walk around first by myself without telling her I was there. Later that night, I was walking along Sukhumvit Road and found her sitting down on the edge of the pavement, presumably taking a rest from standing up. She was a bit shy at first, but after speaking, we went for drinks. She spoke about how she wanted to go to Pattaya and Koh Lan, so I said we could go there the next day. After drinks in Carlson Road, she came to my hotel room and the aerobics were great and it felt natural somehow. Nothing about money was mentioned that first night, which surprises me. She left in the morning without asking for any money apart from the money for the taxi home and went back to her room to pack for Pattaya. In the afternoon, we went to Pattaya for 3 days, including a day trip to Koh Lan. After that, we went to Koh Samet for 2 days, then came back to Bangkok. She was very affectionate during this period, and by the 3rd day, she was already saying she loved me, which I thought was too fast and not credible. She said how she wanted me to be her boyfriend. She also said that she would not believe I am her boyfriend until it lasted more than 9 months or a year, which made the concept less ridiculous and more realistic. She also said more than once in my whole trip, no one can ever love me, I'm a ladyboy. On the 5th day, when we were on the beach in Koh Samet, she said she wanted me to pay for the rent for her apartment this month, and I agreed. When back in Bangkok, I had work to do on my laptop, so I did that during the day, but she stayed with me most evenings and almost every night, with 2 exceptions where she was working in a shopping mall and got home late. I am positive this part is true because of her not wearing much makeup on those days, but there is a possibility that I was deceived. One night before we agreed to meet up, I found her standing with her friends on Sukhumvit Road, which seemed a bit suspicious, but I'm sure she did not meet any guys because it was early on in the evening and she said she was waiting for me. Now, for the last week, we went to Phuket for 5 days. On the first day, we had a small argument and she said she wanted to fly back alone, but I think it was attention seeking. Communication at times was very difficult because of her lack of English and relatively low level of education, so that probably triggered it in the first place. One aside note, she claimed she had completed all the years necessary at university studying tourism except the last year because she couldn't afford it. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. We also had an argument on another night where I filmed a band playing on my phone for literally 5 seconds, but she thought I was filming another ladyboy, flipped out and disappeared into the night. I had to go out and find her to calm her down. She was frequently jealous and paranoid of me looking at other women, even when I wasn't. Apart from this, we had a great time in Phuket. We hired a motorbike and went to different beaches every day. I loved it. At the end of the trip, I paid her the rent for her apartment for the next month, and on the last night, she took me out to eat hot pot with her as a farewell dinner, with her paying the bill. During our trips, I paid for all food, drink and entertainment. She seemed genuinely sad that I was leaving, and in the following days posted on Facebook about how she felt lonely, etc. She also claimed she cried after I left, but even if she did, maybe it was mostly because my financial support had just hit the road and it was not really about missing my actual company. I just didn't know if it was genuine or not. Please note that I do not take spending 3 weeks with a lady or ladyboy lightly. In fact, it's the longest I've ever stayed with a lady. The maximum was 2 weeks with an ex-girlfriend. I did it because I genuinely liked her. I also have a soft spot for Eurasians with semi-Russian-like features mixed with Oriental features, which she kind of has. So yes, I did feel attracted. Maybe not truly in love, but I was happy and definitely wanted to see her again. When I left Thailand, I said I would be back in 3 or 4 weeks and asked her to wait for me. I also gave her 10,000 baht on the condition that she would not work on Sukhumvit Road or any other place. The extra 5,000 baht was to cover the debt she apparently had from borrowing money to pay for her mother's hospital bills, where she apparently has 5 years to live. I made her promise she wouldn't sell herself on the street in Sukhumvit Road. Initially, I seemed confident that she would keep her word, but around 1 week later she started changing and I'm convinced she was working again. On the second week, she said she dropped her iPhone in the toilet and that it cost 7,000 baht to repair for water damage. I didn't fully believe it because she got it repaired within 24 hours and she told me that all her data was fine. It just didn't add up. I happily paid just because I thought she was desperate for money. On a side note again, she told me that if she did not pay for the repair shop would sell the phone in 3 days. I didn't believe this. By the third week her behaviour got worse and she seemed less like the same person. She only ever seemed to talk about money. She finally admitted that she was going back to work on Sukhumvit Road one night, but then very strangely came home back to her room. I saw proof, when I begged her not to. She said she had lost 60,000 baht in a casino game where her friend had lied to her about it and tricked her into playing. I am 100% sure this is fake, of course. The videos she sent of this casino look silly, and she subsequently deleted the video and location from line of where the casino apparently was, i.e. not in the central location. She also refused to provide any paper contract or evidence of funds owed, saying the casino had CCTV as evidence. This is clearly not true. When it was clear that I was not ready to hand over 60,000 baht, she said 30,000 baht would do. The next day she said she sold her phone for 10,000 baht to pay off some of the casino loss. Suddenly she appeared once again on the Line app with a different account with an apparently basic phone that can't make video calls. She told me that she had borrowed the phone from a friend living in the same building. This was obviously not true, and I will assume that she was all dressed up to work on Sukhumvit Road and did not want me to see this. When I rang her on her old number, it still rang, although no one picked up. Over the next few days, the requests for money continued and started to become very irritating. Now you're probably thinking, why am I so surprised by this sudden change? Well, you have to bear in mind that at first she seemed very genuine. She never pushed me to buy things or give her money. One time I wanted to buy her an expensive swimming costume, but she told me not to. She also wouldn't let me check into expensive hotels. Looking back, I'm guessing this was her master plan, so I would have more money to give her. Initially, she did not demand much for food and didn't ask me to buy her any non-food items. In other words, if she was very money motivated, why had she not tried to extract much more cash from me on our first trip together? There were other conflicting bits of information. She always hugged me all night more than I did her. She often initiated aerobics rather than me. She had felt just like a real girlfriend. I think I was the only one she had, because if she had other men supporting her, she would have had to call them in that 3-week period, but she didn't. Thirdly, for her phone number, the only Line account that could come up was the one that I used with her, and I seemed to be the only person liking or communicating on her photos. Lastly, I never added her on Facebook, but I saw her posting status updates, which seemed to match what was apparently true in her life, like having to sell her phone. Perhaps she was only doing this because she knew I would look at her Facebook pages, so it was a cunning way of getting information to me without her actually telling me, much more convincing. My own explanation for this was because of her upbringing and lack of education. So I didn't feel offended, but aside from this, when we looked into each other's eyes, she wouldn't hold the stare for the length of time you get from a loving person. Also, kissing seemed usually to be associated with aerobics only, rather than the kind of kissing you have with a person you are in a loving relationship with. She was also a compulsive liar about various things in a petty, non-nasty way. My theory about the casino story is that her friend gave her the idea. She has a very devious friend who has multiple boyfriends abroad sending her money. On one occasion, her friend received $2,000 from a man. I saw his photo. It makes you wonder how she talked him into sending it to her. Perhaps it was the same story. Maybe my new friend was also trying her luck. She also told me she had to pay 30,000 baht towards her parents' farm as they couldn't afford to pay the bills due to a very bad harvest. Something that was very strange is that her bank account always had a zero balance in it, no matter how much money I gave her. Where all this money is going, who was she giving it to? Are her parents really that poor that she sends them every penny, leaving nothing for herself? I don't fully understand it. It's almost as if she couldn't scam me face to face while with me, but found it much easier long distance. Or perhaps she was very clever and her master plan was to start low, build up trust, and then ask for larger amounts of cash later on when I trusted her. But on the other hand, that story about the casino was so unbelievable and stupid that I'm surprised she actually tried to pull it off. She had been better off being kind to me, because I might have even considered taking her to Europe one day. In the short time, she got a few thousand baht out of me, but if she had been really smart and been nice to me, in the long run, she would have got a lot more from me, because I would have returned to Thailand again and again just to visit her. My theory, and I shouldn't expect rationality from her, she lives for the day and her business action plan is to make as much money as she can in general for her and her family. I think it could be true that she has debt, but who knows? Maybe life is difficult and in the process she has mixed feelings, where on one hand she is exploiting customers as much as she can, and on the other hand occasionally enjoying a man's company or falling in love for a brief moment. So do I regret it? No. It was a good experience overall. I learned to be less naive, and I also learned about Thailand's darker side when it comes to relationships between foreigners and some of the Thai girls. I've read and heard many stories about some Thai girls or ladyboys cunningly extracting a lot of cash from their foreign boyfriends without any feelings of guilt. Looking back, I paid a small price really. I was cheated and I lost a small amount of cash. It could have been a lot worse. I know it would be very easy for your viewers to think that I was very naive and couldn't see the warning signs. However, you have to remember that I was totally in love with this person and always gave the benefit of the doubt. As well as this, she was a very good actress and played her part to a T. In retrospect, I tried to understand it from her point of view, and my final thoughts are, I met her on the street and who can she trust anyway? I probably shouldn't be surprised or expect compassion, as I was just another tourist. So over to you, Peter. What do you think? Was this an unusual scam scenario? It wasn't unusual, I don't think so. I think she was playing the long game, and I think you were just her customer. I think she was trying to get as much money out of you as they do. Now, before we go on, I'm going to read a comment out to you that was sent in by a viewer on this particular story. And I think this kind of sums up, I think this kind of sums up these kind of girls in a nutshell. I am aware that there are people who watch this channel, they enjoy the stories, but they haven't been to Thailand. And some of them, to be polite, let's just say, can be a little bit judgmental, okay? So what I'm going to do, let me put, while I read this, I'm going to put some photographs, a photograph on the screen, right? Have a look at this. Now, what you can see there is a card with 8 individual pictures on it with numbers. Now, on a Friday night when I run my live stream, I have a competition called Spot the Girl. Now, looking at these pictures, these 8 pictures, only one of the pictures in this card is a female, is a girl. The other 7 are lady boys. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is because some people who haven't been to Thailand before might not understand how some guys are on the straight and level and kind of get, they kind of try different things when they're in Thailand. Not everybody, just some guys. So have a look at these pictures here, and you can see it's very, very hard. They actually very much look like females. And just out of interest, in case you're wondering, the real girl out of those 8 images you're looking at is number 2. That is really a female. So bear that in mind when you're listening to these kind of stories. Now here's that comment I was telling you about. In Western countries, there is government help one way or another. In Thailand, there is no help at all. So before you make up your minds about why Thai lady scams lie, do things that you don't understand why a Thai lady's life is to take care of their immediate family. Most girls in the very early age, 14 to 15 years of age, are abused or maybe made to believe that their boyfriends are forever and have children. So that is where Westerners have shown soft hearts and are willing to help. So the scams were learnt. A need for help got Thai ladies into learning about the soft-hearted Westerners. So before you speak bad about Thai women, learn about their customs and life first. If you get scammed, it's only because you allowed yourself to be scammed. Now, the only thing I'd say on his comment, I totally agree with him, most of it anyway, but he doesn't make a distinction between regular Thai girls and bar girls and go-go dancers. Now, they do what they do because they have to do it, but you shouldn't, when people are discussing this subject, when you're talking about normal Thai girls, and I know a lot of Thai women who are very decent, normal women who are married to foreigners, and they wouldn't dream of asking for money or even coming to a hotel room, anything like that. That's not to say that I'd like to be derogatory towards bar girls or go-go dancers. They're all nice girls in their own way. They're a lot of fun, but they do what they've got to do. And like this guy says, or the guy said in his comments there, they do have to take care of their families. They're expected to take care of families. They'll send money back home. A lot of them have got children, and as he said, there's no welfare system, so they do what they've got to do. But let me pick up on a few points in this story, and then we'll move on to the next story. So as the guy was reading out this story about the lady boy, he says she was working in a shopping mall and got home late. Well, my first question to that is, well, if she works in a shopping mall, why is she selling herself on Sukhumvit Road? So first red flag. Your second statement was within the story was I found her standing with her friends on Sukhumvit Road, which seemed a bit suspicious, but I'm sure she did not meet any guys because it was early afternoon. Well, no. A lot of the married guys in Thailand, they can't get out in the evening. So what they'll do, if they want extramarital activities, as it were, not all of them, but some of them, they'll go out in the afternoon, daytime. And I know bars in Bangkok that will open at 10 o'clock who cater to these kind of guys. So the time of day is not really proof of anything. And then you said she was waiting for me on Sukhumvit Road. Well, she had to say that because she was working. She didn't know you were going to come along. You surprised her, so she had to come up with an excuse. The best excuse she could come up with was that she was standing there waiting for you to turn up. But then if that was true, why didn't she tell you that she was going to be there? Okay. And then you said, I think I was the only one she had, because if she did have other men supporting her, she would have had to call them in that 3-week period, but she didn't. Well, what they do, if they've got sponsors or several boyfriends, and someone like you comes along and you're going to take her away for 3 weeks, obviously they can't ring boyfriends, they can't have boyfriends ring them, they can't visit them. What they'll say in most cases, they'll say, look, my mother's very, very sick. I've got to go back to my village. I've got to look after her. I'm going to be in the hospital every day, taking care of her. We don't know if she'll get through this. Now, obviously in a hospital, I can't ring you, you can't ring me. As soon as I get a result in the hospital, I'll come back to Bangkok and I'll hook up with you. And it's a great excuse. And sometimes that happens if a guy goes into a bar, he takes a girl and he'll take her to the islands for a week. And the lady who's running the girls in the bar will say she's gone back to her village to visit her parents for a week, when actually she's gone to an island. Okay, we'll move on to the next story shortly. Just clear up these few points. I never added her on Facebook, but I saw her posting updates. Well, of course, they have several accounts, Facebook, Line, and depending on how many boyfriends they'll have, they'll only give that one account to them. And the fact that you said you've seen her posting on Facebook, so her life must be true. That Facebook account was probably set up just for you to see. She'd have had another Facebook account for her family and friends where she has completely different posts on there. And then lastly, you said she also told me that she had to pay 30,000 baht towards her parents. Well, of course, you know, they have to have excuses to extract as much money as they can from you. Sick mother in the hospital, university fees for the you know, for her brother, drop the phone in the toilet, all sorts. And I've made videos on these sort of scams, and all the things he or she is coming out with are in that video. Okay, so I hope you've moved on. If you're watching this, I hope you've moved on with your life, and you know, you'll enjoy all the things that Thailand has to offer in the future. All right, let's jump straight into story number 3. In my early visits to Bangkok in the 1980s, I used to pick up the This Week magazine, which had a lot of adverts for entertainment, including massage places, go-go bars, escort agencies and the like, as there was no internet back then. There was one small advert for a place I won't name, but it was advertised as a barber shop by day and a bar at night. The idea of this intrigued me. How does one turn a barber shop into a bar? Now, I had the habit of letting my hair grow during the year and getting it cut first thing when I landed in Bangkok. This place was a short walk along Surawang Road from my hotel. So I walked in through the door during the day and they stared at me in amazement. They were all vacuum cleaning the cigarette ash out of the carpet and scrubbing the Mekong whiskey stains off the bar top, and they explained that they weren't open yet. I said that all I was after was a haircut. So the owner took me upstairs to the barber shop. She gave me my holiday deforestation. Then she asked me whether I wanted a massage. I said okay to that, and after a few leg rubs, she got down to the non-traditional business, and although she was a bit on the older side, she looked pretty good, and we hooked up for a few days. It was a bit different to the 21st century back then in the 1980s, when hotel staff and waitresses would offer to escort you outside. I got into the trick of not putting my empty dishes outside the door when I had a meal in the hotel, and when the service girl came and knocked to collect the tray, I'd give them a tip. If they were willing to offer a little extra, I would give them the opportunity to make extra money if they wanted to, and in a polite way. Or if I ate in the hotel restaurant, I could have my key on the table with the number showing. Pretty unsophisticated stuff, I know, but it was all very straightforward back then. I never got any services like that after the late 1990s. By the year 2000, it was all still going on, but it had evolved from innocent encounters with pretty shy girls who just wanted a little extra cash to a more efficient business transaction. One all-in price rather than an a la carte menu back then as well. Guys who were around back then will get what I mean, but I digress, or there isn't much of a story at all, which is why I'm going to mention a driver supplied to me by the hotel, but not in Thailand. I could make it Thailand, but I prefer not to BS, and after all, Peter, one or two of your stories had events set in Vietnam or the Philippines, so I think better tell the story and make it an honest story. The hotel I stayed in Cambodia was by the river, as I planned to take the riverboat up to Siem Reap. Very obliging staff. They had a massage girl call in before I'd even unpacked my suitcase. They got me the river trip booked and a hotel set up and a driver to meet me. A young guy who was a little bit dodgy, I could tell just by looking at him, but this was my new driver. After I had done a few days looking over Angkor temples, he asked me if I would like to look at some girls. No harm in looking, I thought. I didn't mind when he asked a day or two later whether we could pick up his girlfriend. She was a stunner, built like a temple dancer, baby nose and bee-sting lips. You're very lucky, I told him. But as I've already said, he was not a good guy, and he was soon telling me she was just a friend and she preferred me. The idea was to set me up with a top-rate freelancer and then they would split the fees. So I told him I like to pick my own girls. Actually, if he'd been straight with me, I might have even given her some serious thought. So back in the barber shop in Ceylon, Bangkok, during the normal chat following professional services, I mentioned I would be visiting the Angkor temples, and I showed her the photos I had developed. I was a temple chaser in those days, and when she said she liked temples, we arranged to go around and visit a few in the old city in Bangkok. We started by going to Wat Saket because she had some idea the place didn't exist. Of course, it's at the foot of the Golden Mount. While there, a Farang girl tourist approached me to ask what places I'd suggest she see, as she'd done most of the usual tourist spots. I suggested a temple that most tourists often miss, and it is an amazingly decorated temple. Some would say overdone, but well worth a look. While I showed her the location on the map, my girl, prowled around discreetly in the background. Not that I would have minded if she'd been looking over my shoulder and making suggestions, but let her play it the Thai way. So back in the car, the hotel had rented me and off to Wat Arun, which she has never visited, rather amazingly. I suppose it's like they say of the Parisians. Most have never been up the Eiffel Tower. We had a midday snack in the temple grounds at a rickety table by a dodgy looking street stall presided over by a jolly looking old Thai lady, as I feared I didn't feel so jolly the next morning. In the evening, when she was paying a visit to my hotel on the other side of the road from Patpong, yes, you know the place, we stopped at a stall in the alley leading to the hotel for a pile of raw cockles dipped in vinegar. I enjoyed them and no ill effects the next day. I also visited her bar in the evenings where a bunch of Farangs drank and the girls laughed loudly. Her friend worked behind the bar and she was a nice funny girl who was always laughing. They all laughed. I brought her cigarettes as a gift and a couple of times and hoped my temporary girlfriend might suggest a threesome, but she never did. And that's about it, such as it is. The day that I flew out to Burma, where the friendship I had with my future wife was just getting going, I dropped in to say goodbye to Ong, but she wasn't there. The 3-day rule is not a bad one, and anyway, I'd just been giving my future wife her first kissing lessons. So I was being a good boy until I did what you are doing with your separation. She retired to Myanmar as a nun and I couldn't wait to try out the Bangkok Rapid Transport System for the first time. There you go, very well written. I enjoy those old nostalgic stories, these ones, like the one a couple of weeks ago where the guy sent in the old photographs around Pattaya. Why do I like them? Because I do remember the early 90s. Thailand was completely different. It was a lot more charming, quaint, call it what you will, but good memories. I don't talk about it too much because people don't like to hear, especially younger people. But when I read a story like this where the guy's talking about the 80s, 90s, it's kind of interesting even for me to listen to. All right, so let's get straight into story number 4. On the train from Singapore to Bangkok, I got talking to 2 American brothers. One who had been to Bangkok before, and I decided to pal up with them for a few days. Rob, one of the American guys, had a Thai bar girlfriend and was meeting up with her the next day. On our first night in Bangkok, Rob took us to Patpong Road. We drank a couple of beers in a Thai boxing bar, then ended up in a bar called Ladies Galore. As you can imagine from the name, there was an eye-opener of a show from the girls. I ended up bar finding a beautiful Thai bar girl and went back to the hotel for some aerobics, in brackets, protected. The next evening, Rob's girlfriend was meeting up with us and she said she would bring a couple of lady friends. We were sitting at an outside bar near the hotel and these 3 beauties walk up. I was instantly attracted to one of the young ladies with short dark hair who was about 25 years old. I beckoned her to sit with me and ordered some beers. Rob's girlfriend's English was very good, but her 2 friends' English was very, very basic. My date was called A. The conversation wasn't great, but we got by with smiles and broken English. She worked as an admin in a hospital in Bangkok. Well, that's what she told me, and this being my first time in Thailand, why wouldn't I believe her? At the end of the night, I had persuaded my date to come to my hotel room for more drinks. Laying on the bed, I was feeling really aroused, but she kept saying no. After about an hour of me keeping on, she gave in and we both had a really great night of aerobics, in brackets, with no protection. The next morning, she was up early and said she had to work, but would be back tonight as it was a weekend coming up. We could spend a couple of days together. That night was much like the first night, drinks and food at the bar, then all back to our hotel rooms. I was hot and sweaty and went to take a shower. All of a sudden, I heard this shouting and a flip-flop came flying through the shower door and hit me on the head. With more shouting, I quickly went to see what all the fuss was about, and she started throwing anything she could get her hands on at me. I tried to calm things down. I ran and banged on Rob's door to bring his girlfriend so she could translate. A was holding a piece of paper with the name Paul on it and assumed I had another bar girl in the room and it was my name on the paper. Apparently the bar girls like to write down the Frang's name, and the cleaners hadn't cleaned the room properly. It was under the ashtray. Luckily, she didn't find out I did have another lady the first night things calmed down, and we had great makeup aerobics. The 6 of us spent all weekend in and around Bangkok, travelling to a Thai version of Disneyland, and in the evening going to the biggest restaurant in the world. We spent every evening together before I had to fly back to Malaysia for my flight home. A came to the airport with me and not once asked me for any money. She had written her address in Thai on a dozen envelopes so I could write to her, and also gave me her school ring, which I still have. I gave A 500 baht for her taxi home and promised I would write and come back one day. We exchanged a few letters, but I told her I wasn't sure when I would be back to Thailand. The next letter I got from her dropping a bombshell that she had a baby and needed some money. I wrote back to A and told her I would be coming back in 3 months and she should meet me at the airport with our baby. She wrote back saying she would. I flew out to Thailand in 1991 and A was nowhere in sight, and to this day I've never heard from her again. I don't think she was a bar girl, but in the end she asked for money. What do you think, Peter? Well, you know me, I'm very, very cynical. There's a couple of red flags. Firstly, you said she came up to your room. She played hard to get, but she did give in the end. Well, a regular Thai girl wouldn't do that. She wouldn't even come up to your room, you know, a normal, decent, regular Thai girl. That's the first thing. And the second thing, she's holding the ace up her sleeve, the golden goose, as it were. You know about all the stories. My mother's sick. I need money for medicine. I need money for sick buffalo, whatever it is. The ace in the hole is obviously, I'm pregnant with your baby. You're not in Thailand. You know, how are you to know? And I don't think people are caught out so easily these days with DNA tests and all that sort of thing. And people have wised up. But I just think she was a kind of... she was playing the game. What else can I say? I'll keep it polite. Right, let's go into our final story. Now, just a quick explanation on this story. It's not from Thailand. I know this is a Thai, a kind of Thai-based themed YouTube channel, but this story is from the Philippines. A lot of this kind of thing goes on throughout Southeast Asia. If you've got a story and you're in a country like the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, something like that, close by to Thailand, and it's similar to these kind of stories, and you'd like to share it with people who watch this channel, why not? Send it in. I don't mind reading it out. They don't have to be strictly Thailand. This took place in the Philippines. It's quite a short story, so let's finish off with this one. In 2016, I was working as a chef in the UK. I love to travel, but until 2016, I had never been to Asia before. One weekend, my normal assistant fell sick and I had to organise a new assistant from an agency. The new assistant arrived shortly, and after some time, we started talking about travel, etc. He was called Mike. He was interested to know if I would consider a Filipino girlfriend. I said, why not, as I have had foreign girlfriends before. So I was introduced to his girlfriend's best friend. She was a girl called Rose, 24 years old, living in Manila. I was 28, so there wasn't much of an age difference between us. After 1 month of talking, I was bored of video calls and was interested in seeing Rose in person. I booked a ticket and arranged for Rose to meet me at the airport. Rose met me at the airport. She was shy but friendly. I was staying in a condominium in Manila. My first evening in Manila, I was alone as Rose was working the early shift the next morning. So I head out to the rooftop bar next to my condominium. I was jet lagged from the flight, but I wanted to see what Manila was like. In the bar, I was drinking Red Horse beer, which was recommended to me by my Filipino assistant. The waitress in the bar was called Eleanor. She was 21 or 22, and I could see Eleanor smiling at me constantly. I thought she was just being friendly. Turns out she was more than just a waitress. Eleanor asked me if I wanted any other special services. I'm ashamed to say I said yes. So my first night in Manila, I had cheated on my girlfriend with a bar girl. I was only in Manila for 7 days. Rose was working all the time, so I was introduced to her friend only to show me around whilst Rose was working. Her friend was called Vilma, who was 38 years old. Vilma was half Filipina, half Mexican. We would get quite drunk together, but nothing happened as I was still with Rose. We did share a bed, but nothing else. My time had come to leave the Philippines, but I booked another ticket shortly after returning to the UK. My relationship with Rose soon ended, so on my second trip, I stayed with Vilma. I had the most enjoyable 14 days with bedroom aerobics on offer morning and night. I hope my story is one your viewers will find interesting. I have since had other Filipino girlfriends and I intend to return to the Philippines in September or October. There we go. Very, very short, but quite an interesting story. A little bit of a longer upload today, guys. Before I go, just very, very quickly, I just want to tell you about a change in schedule to my live streams. Now, as you know, UK time, 9 p.m, Friday night, that's when I put out my live streams. They're a lot of fun, a lot of people in last week, nearly 500. I put out a poll out there because I did a unannounced stream on a Sunday night and it was very, very busy, a lot of people in there. So I put a poll out there and I said, would you rather have the stream at 7 p.m. Sunday night or would you rather have it Friday night at 9 p.m? And it was a mixed bag, but 49% of the votes came back, 7 p.m. on a Sunday night. So for the moment, I'm going to continue with the streams on a Friday. I'm going to do a few Sundays as well, so 2 a week, just for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to monitor the numbers, and whichever week has the bigger numbers, I'm going to drop the other one. Not because I don't like doing the live streams, I could do 3 a week, but you know, you can get too much of a good thing, and if I do 2 or 3 streams a week, people are going to get very, very bored very, very quickly, okay? But I will let you know which day I decide. That's it for today, as always. Thanks very much for listening to these 5 stories. I'll be back with some new stories next Saturday, and that's it. I'll see you all next week.